back. WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net in expanding the conversation around here and not sticking to sports. Wink, wink. It's been a little while. I tracked this guy down. Well, I've been following him for years on Twitter. Obviously, it goes back to a Sarah Huckabee Sanders moment a year and a half ago when he became one of my champions. But I've been aware of his cause for a number of years. A journalist, and a guy who reports for duty every single day to a parade of various lies, half-truths, and misinformation. Brian Karem can be followed out on Twitter at Brian Karem. I follow him at Playboy. The White House correspondents follow him everywhere he goes on Twitter as well. And it is a pleasure to have him on, and especially in advance of him living here in the area and having the Rhythm Bandits out playing some music this week. Brian, it's a pleasure to have you on, dude. I don't know you, but I feel like I know parts of your soul here as you bear them in little snippets out on Twitter. And in the era where free speech ain't free anymore, I commend you, dude. So it's a pleasure and an honor to have you on, my friend.
Well, thanks.
Well, the Rhythm Bandits. Let's talk rock and roll and some music here first. When's the band playing? And then we'll get to the other band that plays down at Pennsylvania Avenue every day.
We're at Hershey's this Saturday night in Gaithersburg, and it's for Valentine's, so come on out and have a lot of fun. It's rock and roll at its finest, baby.
You play Stairway to Heaven, Freebird, anything I can make out to with my wife like I did at the high school dance, or no?
Plenty of room for that.
All right, well, it's Valentine's Day, man. You got to make a little room for love here, Bri. I mean,
that's right. There will be.
Dude, how do you do it? I mean, I one day of my life, like a dreamer, right? The Ravens. I've been to the White House twice. The Ravens have won 2 Super Bowls. The first time I went, I met George Bush in 2001. I handed him a copy of Purple Rain that he actually held upside down when we took the publicity picture, which is lovely. I have a picture of my book upside down in the president's hands. And then when Obama had us there 6 years ago, now into the Rose Garden, we were kind of on the outside, took some pictures, but I did enter. I did give up the passport. I did sit in the press room. I was behind the little podium in a room that's much smaller than America would believe it to be. But you report to that little room every day for duty. How do you do it, Brian?
Well, it's a good question. It's tough under this president, but I mean, it's just part of the job, baby. You just got to go and ask questions.
What is the protocol in asking questions there? Like, I've often wondered, like, who gets a question. I call myself Arnold Horshack. I'm sure if you're of the right age to remember Welcome Back, Kotter, where Horshack would just wave his arm, and not be seen by Mr. Kotter. Epstein's mother wrote a note. You know. So. Yeah. I was that guy at an Orioles press conference because I am banned by the Orioles. So we have that in common. Peter Angelos took my press pass after 21 seasons back in 2006. Wow. So I showed up at the first Buck Showalter press conference, whenever that was, 8 years ago, and I waved my arm for an hour and was never seen. So I know I know the First off, I know you've been shouted down and whatnot,
The protocol is different depending on where you are. I mean, if you're in the briefing room itself, there is an established protocol of raising your hand, and then, someone will call on you or not. And it's, 6 to 1, half dozen the other as to whether or not you get called on. Those who are well-known, not well-known nationally, but well-known to the press secretary, they'll get called on, or favorites of the president will get called on. Obama had his, Clinton had his, Bush had his, and Trump has his, and that's all par for the course. It used to be when Helen Thomas was there, she always got the first question and always ended it, but that kind of protocol is left, and the rest of us raise our hand, and we may or may not get called on. Now, if you're out since they've kind of done away with the briefings, and the president rarely does news conferences, it's kind of a rugby scrum when you're out on the north lawn or south lawn, and then it's a lot of people you got to pull a Sam Donaldson, and you got to blurt out the question, and you got to hopefully get heard. And so there's different protocols depending on where you are and that kind of covers pretty much everything. When the president is doing his press conference, that goes back to the old protocol of raising your hand, and he'll maybe call on you or maybe won't. But once again, none of it's set in stone. It's all basically you're there to do a job, you get your question answered, and you do what you got to do to get it asked and get it answered.
I don't mean to be flippant, but I'm wondering what the job is at this point, right? I mean, you're the White House reporter for Playboy. You're a political analyst. You've shown up on the talk show circuit. You're making time to be nice to a Baltimore sports guy tonight that has some interest in all of this at this point and sort of watches it from the outside. And, I've had a little ticket behind the red carpet again, and I go to the Super Bowl. I'm a media member in the sports world. I've been one for 35 years. I've seen it change dramatically. I'll be at the NFL owners meetings next month in Scottsdale. I've now been 5 feet away from Roger Goodell when he moved the Oakland Raiders out of Oakland. You know what I mean? When he moved the St. Louis Rams out of St. Louis. Yeah, but it's a fascinating thing to see the operative and seeing the operatives from the government come to the NFL, seeing now what's happened to Bob Costas this week, seeing what's happened to Khashoggi, and seeing my name with journalists for 35 years next to me, and wondering, where this thing's going. The NFL thing has become quite a circus for me. 35 years into this, I sort of laugh at the notion that anyone's going to ask Goodell a gotcha question, or that anyone in your circuit's going to be allowed to ask Trump a question ever again, quite frankly. But then I weird out by watching what happens in Russia, right? Like 3-4 years ago, I saw what a Russian Putin press conference looks like, and it legitimately looks like a WWE match with placards, with signs, right?
Well, I'm worried about where it's going. Jamal Khashoggi was killed and aided and abetted by Saudi Arabian government. Our government won't acknowledge that. I know friends of mine that are they have to have bodyguards when they're going out in public covering rallies from the president. I've had death threats. Others, April Ryan from Baltimore, she has to have someone around her. It's not an easy time to be a reporter, but it's a time when you got to do it. And we're there every day. We have sources outside of the president himself, people that will talk to us. He doesn't like that, but that's too bad. We're there to ask questions and seek answers. It's okay if he tries to spin. I've covered every president since Reagan, and, it was Larry Speaks who said, don't tell us how to stage the news, we won't tell you how to report it. This president wants to stage the news, tell you how to report it, and then be able to change it when how you report it, that he told you to do it, isn't what he wants, 10 minutes later. It's a difficult time, but it's a time when you have to remember what it is that you do and try to do it every day.
I wonder why they let you in. I mean, me. I'm not like the Orioles just stopped letting me in, and I thought to myself, well, the other people around here aren't going to let me, after 21 years, get hung at high noon by Peter Angelos. But they did, and 13 years later, I'm still not in. 13 years later, no one has dared report, even when Mike Flanagan committed suicide, no one reported anything for fear of their job, their boss, money, legal, all of those things. I've seen this just in the toy department, about a cruddy baseball team that's been poorly operated and, and highly profitable over the last quarter of a century here when, I remember the state building the stadium here. You're a resident. You live in the area. You understand what it takes to get these stadiums built. So I've done this in the toy department, having watched the Colts roll out of here in Mayflowers, having watched 2 stadiums get built and us go steal the Browns. So I've seen sort of the dirty political pool, as dirty as it can get on the sports side, short of murders, which they cover with the New England Patriots, and cheating, which they cover, and all that stuff up there. But on the political side, like what's happened in Annapolis this year, and sports journalists were involved in that. The crazy stuff this guy says about free speech and the limits that have been put on all of you. I am shocked 2 years into this that more guys like you just haven't found yourself outside the gate there, and they just say, not today, you're not coming in today. Because that's what they do to sports journalists. Look, the NFL did that to Bob Costas. I mean, it's incredible, right?
Well, sports is a little different than politics, but some would say not really. But at the same time, it's when you're standing for free speech, when you're there as a reporter covering government, it's more difficult for the government to stop you from being there and exercising your free speech than it is for a privately owned sports team to do it. It's not right either way you do it, but it's a little more difficult in the public arena than in the private arena. And it's also more difficult because of the fact that it is the President of the United States. And so he's got to, as much as he screamed and yelled about us, the only one he's really gone after is Jim Acosta. And it's a damn shame that he did, but that didn't last too long, and Jim is back in the room and where he should be. And the President has not gone after any other reporters since him. I always thought, to be honest with you, I think Jim and I one time mused about who'd have the press pass pulled first, and he had his. But,
I had a buck on you if it matters, Bri.
Well, yeah, on the over-under on that, I guess it depends on where you bet. You might have made some money, but but it's difficult to do that. Is it not saying that it wouldn't happen, and not saying that it still can't happen, but it is a little more difficult for it to happen in the public arena in government than it is in the private arena. It's not right by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, the idea in this country is, I may disagree with what you say, but defend the death your right to say it. But today it's become, I disagree with what you say, and because I disagree with what you say and I'm in power, screw you, I'll kill you. And that's not the America I grew up in.
Well, certainly in the case of Khashoggi, I don't know where the accountability, as gruesome a story, as sourced the story with video and all parts of it, I'm sort of blown away by that one in the modern era where everything is laid out, that there is the public hanging at 5 o'clock, and, it is. I will not travel to that part of the world now, where maybe 5 or 10 years ago I would have thought nothing about that. I'm sort of off of it now, and I like traveling the world, and I like going other places. But I think to myself, I've had journalists next to my name for 35 years. I don't need to be messing around with that sort of thing. I'm already missing one finger. You know what I mean?
Just one?
Just one. Yeah, lawnmower incident had nothing to do with, not even with the mafia. It's a sad story,
I was going to say, you owe a guy a little money?
Nah, it served no time.
Made a bad bet on
I have no nom story. I have no, heel, bone spur, nothing like that. Just a lawnmower accident, Brian. That's all. Brian Karem is our guest from Playboy, White House, a reporter and sort of thorn in the side of Sarah Huckabee Sanders, which is why I like him so damn much. But the Khashoggi thing, it is bone-chilling for anyone. What happened in Annapolis, the things that are said. Kurt Schilling wonders why I don't like him anymore, but the rope, the tree, the journalist. I've had death threats, Bri. I do sports in Baltimore, you know what I mean? So, I'm on the internet. We're all in this stew together, but the Khashoggi thing, I think, is particularly chilling for anyone, where it says journalist and we're getting on a plane to go someplace, I don't know, the Philippines, wherever, the Caribbean, wherever, right?
Right. Well, it's, when you think of where we are right now as a country and what is happening around the world, and you have a president of supposedly the freest country on the planet telling people that reporters are the enemy of the people, we're in a strange and bad place. And it's not just in the United States, but what we do here reflects and reverberates around the world. And that's, for reporters everywhere, this is a very dangerous time. And that doesn't mean you stop doing what you're doing. It doesn't mean you're a little bit more careful. But I also say it's a time when you have to be more bold. Because if you don't stand up now when you need to stand up, then who's going to stand up? If we give in to that type of oppression, then the world suffers. And I know that sounds, for some people, it sounds like he's on his high horse or, oh, that's a lot of bull, but it's the truth.
Now, Brian, I got a cousin in Venezuela trying to get out and get back to America. He was born here. I've been back and forth with a cousin literally in the last 2 weeks. So it is very, very real and close to home for me. All of my relatives are in Venezuela.
That'd be a bad place to be right now.
Yeah, that'd be another bad place to be. We think Baltimore's bad. You should see Caracas right now. Brian Karem's band, the Rhythm Bandits, are going to be rhythm banditing at Hershey's in Gaithersburg this week. I guess I picked a good week to have you on. You've been a good sport. I definitely want to come out and tilt a beer and honor your free speech and your courageousness. And
rock and roll, brother.
Man,
it better be bourbon. If it's me, it's bourbon.
It's bourbon.
I'm not a beer drinker. I'm a bourbon drinker. Right. Born and raised in Kentucky.
Well, there you go. I'll make sure we get something special for the first weekend in May for you. I'll bring you back on. We'll do derby picks or something like that. Really appreciate the time, and I appreciate your courage in covering this. And I want to say this out loud for the first time. The day the handcuffs come for him, you are the guy I'm going to be following. Let me put it to you that way. So every Friday, I'm convinced it's going to happen on a Friday, Bri. I'm following everybody, and I'm like, this is going to be the Friday afternoon that we're all free at last, and I'll be following Brian Karem on Twitter for all the inside skinny. And when I'm not, I'll be buying bourbon with you at the Rhythm Bandits. How about that, bud?
There you go.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks for the talk on free speech. We'll stay in touch, and I'll continue to follow you. Keep up the great work, man.
Thank you very much, man. Thanks for having me.
Brian Karem from Playboy joining us here on WNST. You can find me out Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. I stream live each and every day on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I've been following Brian around for about a year trying to get him on to talk about free speech and all that. You can follow him. It's Brian with an I and Karem, covering all the things at the White House, including Sarah Huckabee Sanders whenever she comes out like a sort of Groundhog Day. You can follow him at Twitter, which is where I follow him, and so do hundreds of thousands of others, sometime from the Rose Garden, sometime from inside the press facility, and sometime from a rock and roll establishment with a bourbon in his hand with the Rhythm Bandits. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. The buyatoyota.com audio vault is there 24 hours a day for anything you miss here. Sports, politics, Baltimore, fun, baseball, football, business, rock and roll, comedy, sometimes some comedy. Little George Lopez coming up with the Modell lyric as well. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.